We have a big update in the case of a college cheerleader accused of hiding dead baby's body in a trash bag in a closet. We have the autopsy and video of her in court per WBIR TV. Laken Snelling is now out on bond. She's living with her mom and dad on house arrest. What this autopsy tells us about what happened inside of her. This story is so difficult to comprehend, and it's also so important to remember that there's so much that we still don't know about what happened and about the 21-year-old girl who is at the center of this case. This is video of that 21-year-old college student. Her name is Laken Snelling. This is video of her in court earlier this week per WBIR TV. She appeared in a red dress. She pleaded not guilty to charges of abuse of a corpse, tampering with physical evidence, and concealing the birth of an infant. Snelling posted a $100,000 bond, and she's now on house arrest, living with her mom and her dad. She does not have to wear an ankle monitor. Now, before I get to what this autopsy found, let me break down how all of this started, because we have to go back to last week, August 27th in Lexington, Kentucky, and that's when police were called to the house of Laken Snelling for a report of an unresponsive infant. The child was pronounced dead on scene, according to police. WLEX TV says that police say the baby was found dead inside a closet. Then there's an arrest citation that says the infant was wrapped in a towel inside of a black trash bag. The citation goes on to say that Snelling reported.
I was actually curious why or who called the cops, but now it sounds like maybe they tried to call them and play it off like, oh, the baby's not breathing, and just go that route, and they thought maybe they would get away with it. And then obviously, I don't know why you wouldn't take it out of the trash bag. That's kind of crazy, whoever found it. But if it was still in a trash bag, it's just insane to think that the cops wouldn't have some kind of suspicion about that. But I guess, I don't know what your mental state is when you decide to kill a baby in the first place, so it must not be great.
Reportedly was read her rights, and she allegedly admitted that she gave birth to that baby, and we have since learned it was a baby boy. She then says that she concealed the birth by cleaning evidence and putting all cleaning items inside of that black trash bag along with the body of her newborn son, who was wrapped in a towel, according to police. Now, it's still unclear how old that baby was or just how far along Snelling was in her pregnancy when she gave birth. What we do know about Snelling is that she's a student at the University of Kentucky in Lexington. In fact, she was a member of the school's stunt cheerleading team, and that's a big deal. The University of Kentucky, we're talking about a large D1 school. They're a member of the SEC. Snelling is also a former beauty queen. She often posts on social media about pageants. I also want to show you this picture here because this is Snelling on the Kentucky Wildcats official website. Now, what didn't appear on Snelling's social media was, from what we could see, any talk about being pregnant. It appears that she stopped posting pictures of herself in April of this year. Now, that's obviously not a crime, but that could raise questions about her allegedly hiding her pregnancy and keeping it out of sight. Now, another shocking part of all of this is that it appears that she presented herself as someone who had aspirations to one day be a mom. This is the last post that she had on TikTok. It's from June, and it's a picture of her with emojis that describe her. And in the bottom left, we notice there is one that says goals, and it shows an emoji of a mom with a child. Now, it's unclear what has been going on in Snelling's life and the circumstances surrounding what allegedly happened inside her home last week off campus in Lexington. Now, we did find these pictures of her with a man. It's unclear if he's the baby's father or what he knew about what allegedly happened to Snelling's baby boy and what happened inside that home. At the time of this recording, though, no one else has been charged in this case, just Snelling. But police have said the investigation is continuing. Now, we did get this autopsy that came back of that infant that Snelling allegedly said that she gave birth to inside her home. The Fayette County coroner ruled the cause of death inconclusive for that infant boy. Now, this was the preliminary autopsy result that came back, so more tests are going to be done to figure out how this baby died. It's also unclear officially at this point how police found out that the baby was born inside of Snelling's home and how they came about this case. Now, at the time of this recording, this is not a murder murder case. It's important to be very clear about that since we don't know the cause of death of this baby boy. Abuse of a corpse and tampering with physical evidence under Kentucky law are both Class D felonies, and they typically result with a prison sentence between 1 and 5 years. Snelling, again, living at home with mom and dad, no ankle monitor, out on $100,000 bond. She is due back in court in Kentucky on September 26th.
Wait, they're confusing me. They said she was on house arrest. Now they're saying she's not on house arrest.
For a preliminary
I think she's not on house arrest.
hearing. Joining us now is Dr. Nada Rutherford, coroner for Richland County, South Carolina, to help us break down how these autopsies typically work, what we can read into from the information that we have in this very sad case out of Kentucky. Doctor, the preliminary results come back as inconclusive on this newborn that Laken Snelling allegedly gave birth to. What does that result tell you?
It tells us that they cannot answer the question of whether or not this infant took a breath or not, because that's what everyone is going to want to know. Was this a stillbirth, or did this child actually take a breath, and was that breath taken from them, which would totally change the cause of death. So we understand that she may not have reported that she was pregnant, that she concealed her pregnancy. We understand there are a number of reasons of why she may have done that at this young age. But it's going to really matter whether this was a natural death, meaning that stillbirth or something happened during the birthing of this child, or whether or not Laken Snelling took life from this child.
When you go in,
I think this is a massive win. I hate to frame it in that way, because it's like a win in the scenario is obviously kind of awful in the sense that this baby's gone now, and the idea that maybe she did potentially end its life, now she could get away with it, or at least do a very minimal amount of prison time because the autopsy results just aren't there. And I don't think they can charge her with murder without having some hard proof that, hey, this baby did, at one point breathe air or whatever it was definitely alive. But the other side of this that I have been thinking about as they were just now talking is there is a possibility, and there is a scenario in my head where potentially she hid the birth from everyone, tried to have some sort of a at home kind of birth, and it just went wrong, and the baby really was stillborn. And then once it was stillborn, she got scared. There's a few scenarios where I could see maybe she really didn't plan on doing this. This really wasn't what she was trying to do. So I don't want to completely jump too far ahead of myself now. I definitely want to backtrack a little bit, because the evidence definitely doesn't look good for her, but also at the same time, I can definitely see a scenario where maybe this was an accident. Maybe it genuinely wasn't something that she was trying to do. Maybe she really didn't mean for this to happen.
To a preliminary autopsy, and you're trying to figure out whether there was, that breath. And I mean, what do you see in an autopsy that would tell you whether or not that baby was ever breathing outside of the womb?
Here's the complication and the challenge when you're looking at a neonate of this size. You're looking to see whether or not certain things have taken place. So how long could the child have lived? What does the umbilical cord look like? Was there an umbilical cord? Was there healing to that stump that may have been there, which would let us know that this child lived for at least a little while after she gave birth? I don't know how you hide this for that amount of time. Usually when we find cases like this, the child is dead within hours of the mother giving birth. And so there's going to be certain things that they look at. Now, what technology Kentucky has available to them is going to be really important for determining whether or not this child took a breath or not. There's all sorts of things that they can do, like a lung flotation test. They can look at whether or not there was aeration of those lungs. They can do postmortem CT scans or MRI scans that can sometimes give them information. But again, I don't know what complications this baby may have had in utero, if this was a completely normal or an anatomically normal child that was born. So those things are going to be very important as we continue to watch this investigation.
So it's possible that Kentucky doesn't have the right equipment to go ahead and actually conduct all of this the research, I guess. It doesn't, to do a full autopsy, maybe they have to send it to a different state, or I don't know if that's even possible, or maybe someone can come in. I mean, it sounds like there's a chance that maybe Kentucky doesn't have all the resources. She's not, I don't think she's saying that flat out that they don't, but she's definitely implying the fact that it's possible that a state like Kentucky, or maybe the area in which, it doesn't seem like Lexington would be behind. Maybe if you were a little further out in the sticks of Kentucky, I could definitely see that. But Lexington doesn't seem like an area that wouldn't have good equipment, or wouldn't have the best of the best equipment. But at least there's something that could be further investigated at another place, or another county, another state, whatever it is. I don't know if that's possible or not. I just don't know enough about the legal system to know if that's a potential outcome or not. But it's at least something to think about, I guess. I didn't something I never thought about. Maybe they just, the reason why I was inconclusive is because they don't have everything that they need to really go do an entire full autopsy there.
To see if there's some other things that may shed light on whether or not the baby took a breath. Because even if there were congenital defects, again, how did the baby die? Was it a natural death that would have happened anyway? Or did she get afraid and possibly smother this child, which would be very hard to prove?
Autopsy result for that preliminary autopsy. You talk about the smothering. Is there like a shaken baby? And I know we're talking about probably a newborn here, but what does that inconclusive result rule out?
It doesn't rule out anything. It says inconclusive for a reason. They don't know what happened. So shaken baby syndrome, you're going to see damage to the brain. You'll see petechial hemorrhaging in the brain. You're going to see some trauma to the brain of that child. Even with it being so new and freshly born, there's still going to be some damage that you may see. You have to shake a child pretty hard. But if you think about a tiny little baby, just placing your hand over that child's mouth and nose, they can't fight you. They can't pull away from you. They don't have the muscle tone to be able to do that. And so you can smother a child fairly quickly doing that. And I hate to say that out loud, but that's the reality that we deal with at the coroner's office, is that it's very easy to unfortunately kill a child that's of that size. You don't have to use blunt force trauma in order to do it. So the inconclusive doesn't rule anything out. It actually leaves way more questions than answers.
And when it comes to, because often we hear there was preliminary autopsy results and then there's the final autopsy, and sometimes depending on the
That's so gruesome and just like rough. I don't know. I mean, obviously we don't know that that's what happened to it, but just thinking that thought in my head just makes me grimace, honestly.
state, I think it could take weeks until you get a final autopsy back. What's the difference? What are the, and I know that a lot might depend on like what we're talking about, what technology is available to the coroner in this particular county. It is Lexington, so it's not like a rural county. But with that said, I mean, what happens now in trying to figure out what the cause of death was?
So let me answer your first question. That preliminary autopsy just tells us that there was nothing that stood out as a smoking gun as to what the cause of death is. So if they thought it was shaken baby syndrome, if they thought that there was some sort of blunt force trauma, if they saw any sort of homicidal markings on the child, then those things are going to be pretty evident, and they would have shared that information with us. So what they mean by inconclusive is they are still waiting on things. Could she have injected the baby with something? Could she have poisoned the baby in some way? Again, is it possible that asphyxiation occurred? So it's inconclusive because there's no smoking gun. Now, could this be a case of the baby's born, she gets scared and again does something to the child? They are not going to rule those things out at this point. They're going to do a full investigation. How was the child found? How long do we think that the baby had been there? Who called 911? What did they actually say? Because from what I saw, it was called in as an unresponsive infant. So was this a fresh birth? What was the texture of the baby's skin? All of these things end up mattering in a case like this. So we have to wait for that full investigation.
I feel like she hit so many things right there in a row that I was already kind of curious about, and I think she did a great job of breaking that down, because it's really hard to say, now that I realize they called in, it does give them a little more leeway to say, hey, we made the mistake. We didn't know that this was going to happen. We didn't mean to do this. This is just, she had a birth at home. whatever it is, there's definitely some leeway more there for Laken, I would say, for the simple fact that they did call. But the fact that it was in a trash bag just kind of blows my mind. I don't really know where that even came into play at, and I'm curious to see what her defense of that will be if she has to ever go to trial. But we do know that there's still a lot of unanswered questions, but at this point, we at least know that they're going to still continue to investigate this, and there will be, I think, something coming in the next week or so. I definitely think there will be more information coming out about the autopsy, and I think that we'll know have a better idea within the next week or two of exactly what happened. Like he said, and I said this earlier, Lexington isn't a small county, so I think they should have the resources available to them to do what they need to do and get this done. Maybe it's just going to take more time, is what it sounds like. So I'm intrigued by this one. Obviously, this is horrific and super sad. No matter what the outcome is, and even if it's just that she lost her baby when it was born, it's still it's still a sad situation. That's not something you ever want to see something happen to someone who's trying to become a mother. I mean, I don't know if that's what that she was trying to do, but it's at least a thought. But anyways, that's it for Laken for today. If you guys are new here, please like, subscribe, hit that bell. You already know all this good stuff, all the YouTube stuff. I appreciate it a ton, man. We're gonna be following along with this one as long as it's out there.